is called Coping During the Holidays for Caregivers. We need tips to help us get through the holidays, and we have our expert, Dowd Foley from Elder Services of Worcester here to present the program. Dowd Foley.
Thank you, Marie. Hi, thanks for having me here. As she mentioned, I do work at Elder Services of Worcester, and I work with the Family Caregiver Support Program. And this program is a federally funded program that is geared for anyone who's taking care of an older person or a grandparent raising a grandchild. And the goal of the program is to really offer information about resources in the community, whether it be Elder Services or whether it be another agency. We're really just trying to reach out to caregivers and let them know that they don't have to do it alone, that caregiving can be an enormous task for just one person to do, and sometimes they have informal support such as family or friends or neighbors, but other times they're often all alone doing it, or they don't choose to let people know that they're really overwhelmed with the caregiving, because it is a journey for so many people. They start off doing some basic things, and before you know it, they're doing a lot of caregiving, whether it's round the clock or it's just the day-to-day. So we talk with children who are caring for aging parents, as well as spouses and siblings and other relatives and friends and neighbors who are doing this job. And so today I really wanted to talk a little bit about some of the issues that come up around the holidays. They're very difficult and stressful for those of us who are not in the throes of caregiving, but for caregivers it can be more challenging, because I think there's a lot of pressure in our society today to stay with traditions and do what we've always done and keep up with what's expected of us. And a lot of times I find that families don't always know what the caregiver is doing. And so they just think that they're going to show up on the day, the holiday or around the holiday time, and things will be as they always have been. And I'm here to say that it's okay to change things up, that we don't have to keep with the old traditions, that we can always create new traditions and new ways of having some joy around the holidays. Because for a lot of people it is joyful, but for many people it can be a very stressful time. You already have so much on your plate every day, and now you're expected to add on with shopping and wrapping and decorating and cooking and baking. And so if that's the way you've always been, I think now is a really good time, a few weeks before, to think about how can I do things differently. The other thing is, my concern is that the caregiver does neglect their own needs. We do see a lot of caregivers who forget to take care of themselves, so they have a greater level of stress already, they have a higher rate of depression, and if they're already in this mode, then to give them more things is almost a way to send them over the edge, or to really ruin the holidays. So I'm giving you permission to change things up and to let you know that it's okay to do what's right for you, most importantly. And then secondly, it's what's important for the person you're caring for. We do see a lot of caregivers taking care of somebody who has some cognitive problems. So there's confusion, dementia, Alzheimer's or another related disorder. And what's really important for that person is normalcy and routine. So if you're a caregiver, you know that routine is very important for you, but it's also important for the person you're caring for, who is very confused about their surroundings, what day it is, who's coming and who's going, and if you have services coming in, that can also be disruptive around the holidays. So what I did think about was looking at a site that has coping with the holidays tip list. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. And also, just to step back, even if you're a caregiver for somebody who's in a nursing home or another facility, that can be even difficult too, because you're trying to keep up the pace as well as visit and do the things. You're still caregiving, you're just doing it in a different way. So this also applies to you too. Again, I think there's expectations put on us maybe if we're the mother or the father, that things have to be a certain way for all the children and the grandchildren, and you can do it. You just need to do it a little differently. So one of the things they recommend is that you organize the events around your routine, which I already mentioned. You want to simplify things. If your routine is going to be disruptive to the person you're caring for by throwing in a big holiday party or having a large dinner on the holiday, then maybe you can think about adjusting that. The second thing is to plan for your best time of day. What's a good time for both you and the person you're caring for? If mornings everybody's clearer and has more energy, maybe a late morning, a brunch or just a gathering that doesn't entail a large meal, because we know late afternoons, or a lot of us are very tired by the end of the day. So maybe that's not the best time for you or your loved one. The other thing is, don't try to do too much. You want to save your energy. You still have to caregive. So balancing out how much we all have to give is just so much, especially in one day or in one season. So really trying to look at, okay, if I need to do shopping, if I need to do some cooking or baking, what are the things I can do ahead of time to kind of stretch it out so it's not all falling on me to do in 1 or 2 days. Look at the things that matter the most. What's the most important thing for you that you want to get out of this holiday, or that you hope your family can get out of this holiday as well? The other thing is to keep the gatherings small. If you've always had large family gatherings and functions, rethinking it, maybe spreading it out and having, if you have 3 children, and maybe having them and their children come at one day at a time, or a little bit, a shorter visit, might be the way to go. You really have to look at each situation individually and figure out what's best for you, as I mentioned. Try to limit the noise, especially with people with dementia. That adds to the confusion and then agitation. If there's a lot of noise and talking and music and all that, what are some of the things that you can control? I teach a caregiver class, a workshop, a 6-week workshop called Powerful Tools for Caregivers. And one of the things we say to caregivers is try to look at the things that you can control versus the things you have no control over, because it will just stress you out even more. Find a quiet place if you do take your loved one to a larger function, so that if you're at a function hall or another family member's house and there's 50 or 60 people, is there a small den or a sitting area that you can go to when it's time for a break? Because this person will not be enjoying themselves. And guess what? If you sense that, then you're not going to enjoy yourself. And so it defeats the whole purpose of getting together with family and friends for the holidays. The other thing, as I mentioned before, start new traditions. Have someone else do it. Call up, another family member and say, this year is just really too hard for me. It would be great if I could have someone else do it at their house, or we could find a place. I know in my family it got to be too large to go to my parents' house, so we decided to rent a hall. And the hall gives a lot of space, and it's worked out really well. And yes, it was hard. After many years of going to my parents' house, and now all of a sudden we're in a hall, it was a little adjustment for everybody. But you know what? The important thing was we were all together, and everything else happened. It was just a little different environment. Maybe instead of having a large meal, if you do decide to do a different tradition, you could just have people over for dessert. If you've always been the one to have the big dinner and this is not going to work for you, maybe just a time for dessert it can work just as well. Another point is to invite others to help. Really hard for caregivers to do. So often we see caregivers who think they can do it all. And I'm telling you that if you think you're doing it all now, just add on a holiday and see what happens to you. This could really send you over the edge. And the way that you're dealing with it will have an impact on the person you're caring for. And that's not a win for anybody. So this is the time to say to family members, I could use some help with the dinner. I could use some help with wrapping, I could use help with shopping, whatever it is. I knew of a caregiver who had a difficult time asking for help. This is just in ordinary times, not holiday times. And I think she was in the beginning, so for her, it was easier to say, I can do it all, I'm all set. As her role became more demanding, she was finding it very difficult to keep up with taking care of her husband all to herself, but still finding it hard to ask people for help. So it was suggested that she put something on the refrigerator, so when people came to visit, there was a list of things to do. So her son could come and mow the lawn, her daughter could pick up some groceries before she came over. Another daughter, prepared a meal or two and brought that over. So these are some different things that we can think about as we're going into the holidays as to what we can do to prepare, to delegate, things to other people as well. The other tip is to make gift giving easy. It's a big part of the holidays. Giving gifts is something, especially for parents who have different generations, grandparents and great-grandparents. They feel such an obligation to go out and buy something, get something for everybody. This could be the year or the time that you say, that's not realistic for me. I just can't do this now. So I think I'm either going to shop online, which is a great way, even though Cyber Monday has passed, you can still get a lot of free shipping and deals online, or catalog shopping. Just like in the old days, there's still a lot of catalogs. I have a big pile at my house that comes right before the holidays begin. So you can sit down and have a quiet time with a cup of tea or coffee and flip through the catalogs and pick out something simple. People appreciate gifts. It's really, if it's from the heart, that's the most important thing. The other thing, and I know having children, is they love to get money and gift cards from their grandparents. So if that's within your budget to do any of these things and you've always done it, money and gift cards will never go to waste. You might have to tap into somebody and say, what's a good idea for a gift card or whatever, gas cards, if they're older. Movie tickets are nice for younger. So coming up with some ideas and having a conversation with people as to what might work can really save you a lot of time and energy. By the same token, I just spoke with a caregiver the other day who said, I could use some respite, time away from her husband, who she's caring for around the clock, just to go out and do some shopping for joy. She just needs a break, and even though she's tired, she enjoys shopping. So for her, this is a great way to kind of get out of the mode of caregiving and be a shopper, which I think can be very therapeutic at times, but it can be very stressful. Another tip is to plan ahead for trips and visits away from home. That can be very complicated. If you've always traveled, maybe out of state or out of town to another loved one's place, you need to prepare. Is it handicapped accessible? Is it a place where your loved one will feel comfortable? Again, routine is important for people with Alzheimer's or another dementia, so that if you're taking them into a world that they're very unfamiliar with, will it create more confusion and chaos and agitation? So thinking about that, knowing your loved one, how they are. Some people with dementia just go with the flow. If their loved one, the caregiver is right near them and taking care of them, then they'll do whatever they're told to do, and that's okay too. Again, what's going to work the best for the both of you? Another tip is to talk before the holidays. I've already mentioned this, having a conversation, but it's really important. So many children of aging parents have said to me, I didn't realize how much my mother was doing, or my father, until I had to step in. Maybe because you live, at a distance, so you don't get there. Maybe your parent puts up a facade that everything is all right, and when you come visit, everything looks status quo, there's no signs of any stress, and then the caregiver falls apart when you leave. So you might want to not do that. Just really think about having the conversation, saying, you know what, Dad is not good in the afternoon. He sundowns. He gets really tired. Even if you have to use him as the excuse because you get tired and that's your time to rest. that's fine. You know, it's not being malicious, it's really just trying to get the point across that you don't think that it's going to work out on the day of the holiday or whenever you have you celebrate the holiday. So letting your family members know that this could be the year that you might need to skip. And that's the other thing, is don't make it permanent. Say, you know what, just this year, I think I need to skip by and not make it so complicated. And then maybe family members will feel, okay, well, you know what, we'll do it again next year. And she didn't say forever and ever. And you know what? It's that you'll deal with it now, you're in the moment. If this isn't going to work for this holiday, you'll revisit it next year and see what things are like. Another tip is to share your wish list. I know, as I mentioned, people they tell me that they don't tell family members what they could use some help with. Gosh, I really wish it if my sister would come over and spend the day with her mother so that I could go out. So having that wish list, maybe you write a Christmas card. If you're not very direct and you don't want to confront people, again, in the Powerful Tools for Caregiver workshop that we do, we talk about different ways of communicating. And one of the ways to communicate is using iMessages. They're very powerful. They get the point across, as opposed to using you messages. You need to come here and sit with mom so I can go Christmas shopping. Well, that gets people on the defense, and then they don't hear what you're really saying. They just heard that you were accusatory, and so that kind of might go out the window, the whole idea of you going out for a few hours. But if you use the approach of, I could really use some help, I need some time, and I don't want to leave, mom alone or dad alone, is it possible for you to come over? Sometimes you have to be direct, sometimes you can be indirect, but using iMessages is a really nice way, in general, with any time of the year, every day, with anybody. You messages really create more negative feelings in people. Another one is to prepare your loved one. If you know that you will be the host or hostess and your loved one is cognizant of what's going on, just maybe reminding them that we are going to have some company. It is going to be a little hectic, but it's short term and we'll get through it. You don't want to ignore them because you know that creates problems, but making them part of the plans can be a really nice way to get them in the mood too. For many people who are being cared for, they're struggling with their own health issues. It may be pain, it might be just limitations, they can't do what they used to do, they're dependent on others, so it's very frustrating for them. You have to bear the frustration many times as the caregiver. And if you have a conversation that lets them know, I got a little extra going on my plate for the next couple weeks, so just bear with me. Again, using iMessages, planning ahead with them, and talking it out. If you're getting all stressed out and taking it out on them because they need your help and you were trying to bake cookies, then can you really blame them when you knew that they were always going to need your help for this particular assistance? So just thinking about it and having that conversation is really important. Another thing is to prepare guests. If you do have guests coming, whether it's family members from afar, cousins, or other relatives who haven't seen your loved one in a long time, you may want to let them know, Joe's a little different now. He's declined over the past year. He's not able to speak as well as he used to due to his stroke or, again, his dementia, or he's not as steady as he was because of the Parkinson, or he might forget your name, so you just might have to say, hi Joe, it's me, Debbie, I thought I'd stop in and visit. Those are nice little cues to give people coming into the home so that they feel more comfortable. And I know that there's a lot of people out there who are afraid to visit loved ones because they don't understand the diseases that are going on. And I'll tell you, this is a really nice time to visit with people who maybe they're not cognitively aware, but one of the things they will still understand is, the joy of having someone visit and pay attention to them. So it might be a different visit. You might be, having to say fewer words, talk slowly, use simpler phrases or whatever it takes. But I think as the caregiver, that's our job, is not only should we be educated about the disease, but because we're living with it, we forget sometimes how much this person has changed. I once spoke at a support group for caregivers, and I asked them, gee, could you just tell me a little bit about what your caregiver role is about when I was new to this job? And they all went around the room, and it took a very long time, and at the end, they were like, oh my gosh, I hadn't realized how much my loved one had declined, because they were so wrapped up in their day-to-day that they kind of lost sight of how debilitated or how needy or how much care this person really required. And so when someone hasn't seen somebody in a long time, it might be shocking, or it might even be a little fearful for them. So you want to try to just alleviate that fear. I just want to give you a heads up, whatever that is, and be upfront with them. I mean, you don't want to scare them. I'm so glad you're coming. He'll be so glad to see you. These are things that you can, use to have that conversation. When you're preparing, if you still feel that it's important for you, because many people do. I have a mother-in-law who's, still loves to have the holidays in her 80s. God bless her. I look at her and I say, I hope I can still do that, because I'm tired at the end of the day. But she just loves to have the family and do the big roast and the gift giving and all of that. And it's beautiful, and I love it. I love that she still does that. But I also know that she's tired at the end of the day. And obviously she's not caring for somebody right now, but and she has her husband to help her. But I still think that you need to know what your limitations are. And another thing is to include the person in whatever you're doing. So I knew a caregiver who told me she sat down and did Christmas cards. And if the person was still able to write, that was fine. If you could just have the conversation and say, well, I have 4 different cards. Which one do you think would be good for, our daughter Mary? Or which one, would you like to send to, your neighbor Joe? Something like that, to give them some piece of what you're doing. Christmas music is a wonderful thing to put on for soothing and relaxing, or any other holiday music. Someone I know said that they put music on in the car, and all the radio stations have that constant Christmas music going, and the person who doesn't really sing a lot will start singing and singing to these songs that are just so embedded. Even if we skipped a few words or made them up, because we never really got it as children, you know what, they can still sing, and that's a nice thing to do as well. And some decorations you can modify. You don't have to drag in the 7-foot Christmas tree or, real big tree. You could just either get a little small tabletop one and maybe have the person you're caring for help you decorate it. Here's some simple, bulbs or decorations to put on the tree. And again, that can really bring back some nice memories that we all have as children or earlier in our years about what the holidays mean to us. So some of those traditions can still be there, you're just modifying them. You don't have to decorate every room. Maybe the room that you spend the most time in, that people can just, you and your loved one can enjoy, some lights, flickering, a wreath on the door, put it inside. It's a nice reminder. I know somebody who said that their caregiver has lost track of time, and it's a reminder when they see the wreath or the decorations. And also, we don't have a lot of snow yet, so we know they're not really sure what season it is. But when they're out driving around, if you wanted to kind of take in the holidays in that kind of a spirit, riding around with a loved one to just enjoy the lights in your neighborhood, at night, is another way to do it. The other thing I just wanted to talk about was holiday gifts for people with Alzheimer's. A lot of people say, I don't know what to get this, the person they're caring for. The other family members will say, I don't know what to get them. They have everything, or they don't need it, or they don't know how to use it, or whatever. One of the most important things is the gift of time. Spending time with a loved one. Whether they're in the home with their loved one or they're in a nursing home, going to visit them and spending a little bit of time sharing some moments from the past. Bring a photo album and reminisce about things that you used to do together, telling stories about what's going on, keeping it simple, holding their hand, maybe watching an old movie that they might enjoy some bits of it, more than, maybe you only have to do it for a short amount of time. But these are some things that really can help not only the caregiver, but the care receiver, is the gift of time. You could do coupons. And if you are looking at the caregiver, maybe you could do a coupon and say, I will come in and help with the cleaning, I will run to the grocery store, I will, bring you to church, or whatever that might be. So writing it down. One, it commits. And again, in the Powerful Tool for Caregivers workshop, we ask the caregivers to write an action plan every week, so it is a commitment to themselves that I will do this for myself, and then we have them report back every week. We don't grade them. It's really about getting them to take care of themselves and do the things that they need to do. And it's amazing how many will say simple things like, I'm going to go to bed early. I'm just going to read a book for half an hour. I'm going to take a bath rather than run into the shower. So whatever it is that caregiver used to do that they enjoy doing, this is part of an action plan. So maybe you as a family member could say, I'm going to give you this time to yourself. Gift certificates, as I mentioned, even if for the loved one you're not really sure what to get, a gift certificate for the caregiver to use together. Maybe it's a restaurant with the understanding that you can take them out to eat, that they would be good. Some people it's difficult to get them out the door. Maybe it's just, I'm going to get takeout, or I'm going to bring over a meal, and we'll sit together and have dinner so that you have some company, because that getting out is a difficult task to do. Another idea is books. There are lots of books on, maybe you as the caregiver can give it to family members on a different disease. There's so much written on Alzheimer's and related disorders that you could maybe get them to try and understand. We have some beautiful books through the Alzheimer's Association back at our office. They're spiral bound, and it explains the disease and different behaviors that come about. You can go on websites for the Parkinson and Heart Association and Stroke and find out different books and other information that might be pertinent. But also just for caregivers, might need a really nice book to read. So you could get a book if they like, Nora Roberts novels and they just haven't had a chance to get out. You might want to consider getting them a book to read. Or CDs and DVDs. Again, music, very, very nice and soothing for both. And movies that, whether they rent it at the library or you buy them one that they might want to see over and over, or a series, something that, speaks to what their interests are. Entertainment, if they're still able to get out, going to a play or a concert, that down close by can really bring joy to the person. It's really changing it up. That's what you want to still remember, that person is still in there. Whether they have a lot of problems on the outside with physical illnesses, or it's on the inside with cognitive illness, that person is still there. And what are some ways that they might enjoy, keeping in mind that it needs to be tailored towards their needs as well. Like electronics, just a not to get. I know for a family member we were thinking about something in the electronic world, and it was decided, no, that would be too complicated. They wouldn't know what to do or how to run it, or using a remote gets to be complicated for some people on the TV. So we don't want to overwhelm them or add more agitation to their lives. As the loved one becomes frailer, another idea is clothing. What's comfortable, sweatpants with the elastic waist, easy to slip on and slip off, make for really good ideas, things that you can button in the front. Large banded socks, shoes with Velcro ties are a great thing. They're easier to slip on and off, or even slipper shoes so that they're not as dangerous, but they have some support. And I know that somebody I went to visit a little while back, I was taking her out, and her husband said, well, she has her slippers on, but they look like moccasins. And he said, should I change it? I said, no, she looks fine. She was dressed appropriately, and she was comfortable. She had a little swelling going on in her feet, and she had dementia, so she really wasn't aware, she probably would have been mortified had she been aware, but she looked fine, and that was the most important thing, was she was safe and comfortable. Another idea as a gift is like a collage of pictures, putting it in a frame. So maybe it's your family and your children, or maybe it's the whole family, or maybe it's back in a time when this person has some really fond memories, when they got married, or when they were a teenager, or whatever that might be. Looking at old pictures and maybe putting them up in a collage could be a nice idea. Another not so fancy but well needed gift is through the Alzheimer's Association. They have this safe return program, and we recommend that to people who have somebody who might wander. A lot of people don't think that a loved one will wander, but there may come a point in time where they no longer recognize their house and they want to go home. And that home might be where they grew up 60, 70, 80 years ago. And it becomes really difficult for the person who's caregiving to say, no, this is your home. Well, because of this disease, it's just so awful. It's taken a part of them that just doesn't recognize the current home anymore. So we could get into a whole other show about redirecting and telling little fibs, but in the event, I know somebody who they were sick and fell asleep at like 8 o'clock in the evening in the chair, and their loved one got up and walked out the door. And they were mortified when the police brought them back. This loved one had never wandered before, but that particular night, and it was cold, and it was dark in the winter, they had a coat on, but no gloves or hat, but they were going home. And it was just not planned, it just happened, and that's really what can happen sometimes. So there is a cost for the safe return. It's a bracelet that gets this person an ID so that they're entered into a national database. And so if they were found and they couldn't say who they were or what where they lived, then the bracelet would help them. But you have LoJack, which is a tracking system, which is also available. So if you could look into if the LoJack system device would work for a person with dementia. And there's some others options as well. So these are things that are disease-related gifts that could help the caregiver because there's a cost, or just because maybe the caregiver doesn't think that this is what they need, and you think it is what they need. You could just say, well, I thought it would be a nice Christmas gift or holiday gift. So those are some ideas for giving gifts to somebody with dementia, and even somebody without dementia, like I mentioned. Music and clothing and things that make them comfortable. Is there a special food that they like? Keeping in mind the diet restrictions. It can be costly preparing some of these meals, so these are nice things to think about for someone with different variety of diseases. So I'm going on and on and on, and I do want to end soon, but I just wanted to bring up that the one thing I cannot stress more than anything enough is that the caregiver really take care of themselves. That this is a time to forgive yourself for all the things that you don't get done, and focus on the things that you do get done every single day, day in and day out, and really find some joy in this holidays time, because it is supposed to be a special time, and we sometimes do lose, forget, but we also get wrapped up in our own world as caregivers, and I think that this would be a nice time for you to say, here's my wish list. If you can't do it for 11 months of the year, maybe in the month of December, you can do a wish list and send it out to everybody, or a few people, or whomever you think would listen, and try to have some of your needs met as well. So I thank you for coming. It was a pleasure. Again, I'm from Elder Services of Worcester. If you have any questions, I am going to leave some information here so you can call the Auburn Senior Center. There's a really nice website, the caregiver.com. It's Coping with Holidays as a Caregiver. They do a really nice article. Holiday Hints is another one that's put out by the National Institute on Aging, and that has to do with someone caring for somebody with dementia. Beautiful tips. I'll leave this brochure, which I have back at my office, and it's called Coping with Holidays and Special Events. It's tips for caregivers. So it was my cheat sheet for the day, but it really nice tips that you can appreciate. And I think if you were to Google online, if you have access to a computer, you can get all the information that I talked about. Just put in Coping with the Holidays as a Caregiver or Holiday Tips for Caregivers, and maybe you'll find the answer if I didn't mention something today. So thank you.